Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, coming to you from the villa that is the LaPanta household. How was your Thanksgiving, Anthony?
It was great. It was the smallest Thanksgiving dinner I've ever made.
And I guarantee you didn't make turkey.
No turkey. Nobody likes turkey.
I like turkey.
But if people really liked it, they'd eat it more than once a year. If you really loved stuffing and potatoes and gravy and all that other crap, you'd eat it. You wouldn't just wait till the fourth Thursday in November and say, hey, today we get to have turkey. You'd eat it all the time.
You know, one of the biggest producers of turkey in the world is Minnesota, right? So there goes that sponsorship.
Yeah,
well
in
done.
fact, I think it's from Margot's hometown, isn't it? Isn't it Genio turkeys aren't they from Wilmer?
Yeah. Genio, we retract everything and we would welcome you.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure your turkeys are great.
Yeah. I love turkey, so I will promote Genio any minute.
We had we had 3 people because all my kids are vacationing in Mexico, and you know how I remember the town? It's the town at the end of Shawshank where he tells him to meet his buddy on the beach.
That's where they're at?
Yeah, Zihuatanejo.
Wow.
And so they were down there to celebrate AJ's 30th birthday with their boyfriends, girlfriends, fiancés. And Margot and I couldn't go because of the hockey schedule. So our Thanksgiving was Margot, my mom, and me. And so we had 3 people awesome. For Thanksgiving. It was a great day because we got to relax, and the food prep was so much smaller that I had got to relax and watch football for a good chunk of the afternoon. Had a great dinner. We're going to have a great dinner tonight because as we record this show, it's Sunday dinner. We've got Terrace Major steaks from Feller's Ranch. We've got a charcuterie board that I'm really excited about. So it's going to be great. We got to get this show going because I got Sunday dinner to go. Yeah, you got some
cooking to do. I had a great Thanksgiving too. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So it's Anthony's world. And we all live in it.
We do. And if you remember, as is the case every year, you're invited here for Thanksgiving. And every year, well, maybe I got to see. I might be going here. I might be going there. And then half the time we never hear back from you. And I guess he's not coming because we never really got the reply.
Yeah. All right. Good point. All right. So December 17th is our next live show. That is at Splitrocks. I hope everybody comes on out. Anthony, there's a big trade since the last time we chatted. David Jiricek, who the Wild have been all over for a couple weeks, traded to Minnesota for Damon Hunt and 4 draft picks, including a top 5 protected first-round pick and future second-round pick, third-round pick, fourth-round pick. Lots of picks, which also shows you that Bill Guerin is sort of advancing the stage of his plan where there are so many prospects in the organization, and you have so many guys on this current roster that are signed long-term. There's only, as we've talked many, many times, 12 forward spots, 2 goalie spots, 6 defenseman spots. With all, there comes a point where every organization that has a window where they want to win, which the Wild are about to enter, now that this cap pain is about to be expired, that you have to start using prospects and draft picks as currency. And clearly in the last couple of years, he's made those decisions by extending guys, and he's got a slew of real top players here, not just the superstar and Kirill Kaprizov, but 22 and younger guys and Boldy and Faber and Rossi and all that. So there just comes a point, and the one thing this organization did lack is that big right shot D.
Right. And so before we get into the specifics of this trade and the player they acquired and everything, I think what's been interesting to watch is how Billy I think he's done a really good job of using draft picks as currency. In a lot of trades, he was able to grab extra picks that he knew he'd be able to use to either move up in drafts, to sweeten the pot in a deal, to think about the trades for guys like Brandon Duhaime and Connor Dewar, who those picks were in this trade. They were both in this trade, and they knew that neither one of those guys were ever going to be anything more than a fourth line player here, at least, and maybe anywhere. And now you were able to get the currency you needed to get a guy who might be better. He did it when he had cap space and used that to acquire a couple extra picks that he then used to bolster the roster. Those picks, to me,
you were talking about the Ryan O'Reilly
and
the
exactly.
Dmitry
a couple of years ago when he had cap space,
right, where they were the third party,
and because of that was able to grab extra draft picks in those spots that he then later used. All of those draft picks are such crapshoots. You're hoping when you get a second or third round pick, And you look at some of the trades that were made where it's this guy for a 4. Well, if that 4 ever turns into an NHL player, you're fortunate. If it's a 2 or a 3, sometimes you might get a role player. But when you look every year in the draft, the top half of the draft all make the NHL, and several of them end up being star players. The bottom half of the first round, you're hoping for a guy who can be a regular contributor to an NHL team. And when you get to the second, third, and round beyond, those guys so rarely turn into anything. Now, every once in a while they do, but so rarely turn into something special that those picks, I think, are more valuable as currency in trades than they probably are in actual value. Now you get to Jiricek, and I think it's interesting. I thought at first glance they gave up a lot to make this trade happen. A number 1 pick plus Damon Hunt, who I think is going to be a third pair NHL defenseman. But I thought Billy's comment, the one comment I thought that stood out to me was, this is a guy that was a number 6 overall pick. I don't think we're going to be picking in the top 6 in the foreseeable future. At least I hope we're not. And therefore, this is a one chance to get a guy that had that kind of skill set. I think that to me is the reason why this trade's worth taking a shot. Not, if things go according to plan, the Wild aren't going to be picking in the top 6 in the next 8 years.
Yep. These are also way future picks, so they have a chance to, as you just also said, they have a chance to recoup these picks in the future years. I was a little almost like, I get it. When you see that you're trading, they got a 5th back. So let's just say the 5th offsets one of the picks. All right. So when you're trading a prospect,
1, 2, 3, and a player,
like, I get the shell shockness of Wild fans, but I think if we all just take a little step back here and just look at this trade, who gives a crap about some of these draft picks? Like, to me, it's Damon Hunt, a 1st and a 2nd for this kid. We'll talk in a second about what we think this kid could be, because let's be honest, you and I don't know. And neither does anybody else. They know better than us. And right now they feel he's worth it. The 3rd and 4th is window dressing, man. Like, I know it just sucks to keep on giving them extra picks to try to up it. And the Wild had to make those decisions yesterday. And I think at first Billy wasn't comfortable with it. But when he started talking to his staff, he just said, you know what, we're going to try to recoup these picks, but let's just do it because this is the guy that we want. And we don't want to ruin it over not giving up a 3rd or a 4th. But if you look at this and you just consider, like, as some Wild fans said, who cares? It's a 32nd pick, meaning the joke being that they're going to win a cup. But right now, they're tied for the number 1, the most points in the NHL, depending on what happens in the Winnipeg-Dallas game tonight. And if they finish where they hope to finish, that pick is going to not even be 25. It's going to be 28, 29, 30, whatever. So you're talking about that in a draft that is not very deep. And then you're talking about a 2nd-round pick and Damon Hunt. Damon Hunt was boxed out here. They have Jake Middleton signed for 4 more years. He's playing outstanding. They have Jonas Brodin signed for 3 more years. They have Zeev Buium coming. They have Declan Chisholm, who's going to be a RFA at the end of the year that they're going to have to make a decision on. RFA at the end of the year as long as he plays about 25, 26 more games. Otherwise, he's a UFA. And then on the right side, that's where they're weaker. You have only Spurgeon for 2 more years. You have Faber there. And then the question is, what is going to be there? What we have talked about so many times on the show, Anthony, is that on their blue line, as mobile as they are, they lack that big body, that grit, that huge shot. And this is what this guy brings. And so we'll see what he becomes. The Wild truly, even though Bill Guerin can't come out and say it, think that he was mishandled in Columbus. They feel at 21 years old, when they get into a really good organization with great coaching, that this kid's just going to continue to develop and become what they hope. Now, when I talked to Judd Brackett yesterday, who every head scout wants to pick a 1st-round pick, when he and Bill Guerin talked yesterday and Bill filled him in on exactly what, he endorsed this. He said, you got to do this deal. Even knowing all the picks that they were giving away because of what this organization thought of him in his draft year when they had him 5th on their list and what they love about him now. And so we'll see. Everybody says that his skating's an issue. They have what they believe is a miracle worker in Andy Ness. We'll see. He's done wonders with guys like Marco Rossi and many other players. But he's not like the worst skater in the world. He's awkward. Like if you watch his videos, his crossovers are strange. He sometimes gets tangled in his own feet. But going forward, he's pretty good. He gets in the way. He's gigantic, and he's got a monster shot.
He has a big shot. I don't know how much grit he plays with. When I've watched him, I haven't seen a lot of grit. He's 6'4", but I haven't seen that.
Yeah, he's not like Shea Weber
right,
mean.
I don't think he brings that. But what he does bring is the shot is big. I remember watching him in the World Junior tournament, and he was outstanding for the Czech Republic in that tourney. I think it's just a spot where you've got a chance to get a guy who most teams in the league had considered a top 10 kind of talent, and you have a chance to get it. I think the going back a little bit and the point you were making is that if you start to look and say you're likely giving away a pick that's going to be, let's even just say it's in the mid-20s, you're not going to get a guy with this kind of talent. I have no idea about mismanagement in Columbus. I have no idea. When I watched him play there were two things that and I didn't watch him a lot, but I watched him a fair amount. He happens to be a guy I drafted in our fantasy hockey league, so I was paying attention when I saw his name. I didn't really particularly like his skating, and he didn't look like a guy that was really dialed in his own zone. That's something that can be coached. The skating part, I don't know. I mean, that I think is something that's going to be a work in progress, but teaching a guy the structure in a defensive zone, I think can be taught. It did seem strange that Columbus just decided to push this guy aside, which would be, on one hand, you might say mismanagement. On the other, it could be a red flag to say, this guy's 21 and he's 6'4" and can shoot it through a wall. Are we really going to just send this guy to the American Hockey League and give up? And so that tells you there could be something there. I don't know that there is. It just would be a little bit of a red flag for me. I just think it's worth taking a shot at this guy at this point. What you gave up, I think it was a lot, but I don't think it was a break the bank thing. Where I think is the concern, and this is the only concern I have with the trade, is if you're looking at this year's Wild team and maybe into next year, I mean, this year's team, they're sitting number one in the NHL. They should be a playoff team. They are probably more of a legit contender than we thought they were coming into the season, just based on what's happened elsewhere in the West. Dallas doesn't look as airtight as I thought they were. We were both on Colorado taking a step back. Most people overrated what Nashville had done. Edmonton still is Edmonton with flaws. I don't think there's a perfect team in the West. Yeah. And so if you're in a spot where you have a chance, having the number one pick as your leverage in a trade to potentially add something that you might need more than a right shot defenseman this year is a top six winger. Yeah. And now you don't have that number one. I suppose you could trade a future number one to go and get that. But that's the only thing that jumped out to me.
I totally agree with you.
If you only have one number one to trade, and there might be a guy that you need more for this year than this defenseman.
Couldn't agree with you more, because I actually said that to somebody on Twitter the other day. But, the one thing I will say is, after talking to people in Columbus, a number one had to be part of this deal because it was being offered by other teams. Nashville, Philadelphia.
Was it you that wrote something that somebody had offered two number ones?
One team offered two number ones, then changed that yesterday. Okay. And that team might have been the team the Wild played yesterday. But Barry Trotz wanted him really, really badly. Back to the red flags, that would be my biggest concern, because I always look at like Tampa Bay is a great example. Why did they want to get rid of Steven Stamkos so badly and totally lowball him to make sure that he didn't take it to essentially go get Jake Ensel? Because they know better than most. This is Columbus now. This is three coaching staffs that all felt that he wasn't ready, or that there was something not computing upstairs. And then the other thing is that the previous regime, Jarmo Kekalainen, had every reason to look at him with scouts' eyes, because when you draft a player, you're married to that player and you want him so badly to make it. Here is a totally new regime, Don Waddell coming in with a clean slate, not knowing these guys, and he clearly felt that this guy wasn't ready because he wasn't forcing the coaching staff to play him. They took a 20-year-old at the time and scratched him 12 times, and when he did play, he played sparingly at 10 or 11 minutes. Now he has gone to the AHL. Every time he's gone down there, he's been elite down there, including when he was an 18-year-old in a league that's often unkind, 38 points in 55 games. That same year, he only played 55 games because he went to the World Juniors and lit it up there and was defenseman of the tournament. So we'll see. Sometimes it doesn't matter what he did in Columbus. It's what can the Wild do with him. And when you give up this type of capital, you're going to invest in him and make sure that it works. And I think that's the one thing here. Now they've called him up today. They sent down Travis Boyd to be able to afford him. He's going to be at practice Monday. Can't imagine he plays Tuesday. Originally, when the Wild, when I was writing it earlier last week that the Wild were going hard after him, the one thing that multiple sources from his camp and from the Wild's camp had told me is that if they were able to pull off this deal, that they were going to send him to Iowa for 3 weeks and had the blessing of Alan Walsh, which, let's be honest, he was not happy with him being not used and in the minors in Columbus. That changed, though, the second that Damon Hunt became the prospect, because now Jiricek is the top guy on call-up, and Jonas Brodin, which we're going to talk about more, has a significant injury that potentially could keep him out for a while here. Well, again, we'll talk about that more in a second. So the question is, who do you call up? Right now, it's Jiricek. Now, they got to get him up to speed. He's only played 10 total games this year between the two leagues. So I think that until there's an injury, they're just going to practice the heck out of him.
Yeah, and the 10 total games are in a different system.
Yeah.
And right now, Minnesota's defensive core, even without Jonas Brodin, has played really well. Chisholm and Merrill, who have been the 6-7 guys over the course of the year, we've talked about it on previous shows that John Hines has made it clear that he thinks he has 7 defensemen, not a 7th defenseman. Mm-hmm. And those guys have both played well enough to be in the lineup most nights. And unfortunately, there's only been one spot for him. I think Chisholm's handled this pretty well the last couple of games without Brodin, where he's played next to Jared Spurgeon. So right now, you're not going to force a guy into the lineup just because he's a new face and to make him feel comfortable here. Right. Somebody's going to have to play poorly enough to come out for him to come in.
The one thing I'll say now with Brodin's injury and for Billy still to do this deal is Billy knows what the injury is and how long this could be. So for him to do this deal and trade Damon Hunt in it, I do kind of wonder if they are going to have to add, even if it's a really good depth defenseman to throw in Iowa as a call-up option, because right now, it's thin. Those prospects haven't been great down there.
But I don't know how much thinner it is. I mean, it's Jiricek instead of Hunt.
Yeah, but if Jiricek is somebody that they're still going to want to at some point get a lot of games and a lot of minutes down there, you almost want to have a different type of call-up option. So that's the only thing is I do kind of wonder if, at some point you trade a 6th or something for some sort of two-way guy that you feel comfortable being called possibly. Up. I mean, I'm not.
But I think right now, especially it would also be different. What we've talked about this with the injuries, their start has given them a little bit more comfort.
100%.
So if you're sitting right now in the 8th spot in the West, I'd be more apt to do what you're talking about. Right now, I might say, I'm fine with Jiricek being the 7th, practicing with us every day. And if somebody goes down for a game or two, throwing him in there and let him go. Yeah. And because of the fact
then the question is, who's the next call up? And that's the thing. Like, is it Carson Lambos?
I'm just saying, I think that if you're sitting right now where, well, not Nashville because they're in a mess, but if you're Colorado right now, or if you're Utah or somebody like that, then I think you have to make the move you're talking about. But when you've got points in the bank like the Wild do, I might be inclined to say, well, let's throw Jiricek in there and give him a shot. Let's see what we've got here. Even if it means that it costs us a game or two because of his growing pains, you can stomach that because of where you're sitting, where you couldn't if you were on the bubble.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if they lost a left shot D, who goes to the left side. It would almost have to be like a Spurgeon or a Bogosian. Speaking of Spurgeon, man, what a couple days for him. On his birthday, scores a couple goals, then gets the overtime winner on the day that they grabbed his heir apparent off the roster of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, this is a lot of Jiricek being here, coincidentally, is because they are starting to plan for what life is going to look like after Spurge when his contract's up in a couple years, and you add a big right shot defenseman, and then he scores the overtime winner on the same night. Perfect.
I think his game's been great for about the last 4.
Yeah,
where he's starting to look more like Spurge. His skating's been great from the start. His hands plans I felt were a little
that
off.
Pittsburgh game scared the hell out of me, but that was just that was
his first game back.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm saying the last 4 or 5 games, he's really started to look like Jared Spurgeon again, where he's making plays. He's confident with the puck.
Even the 2-on-1 that he helped break up on the Nashville winner, on the his winner. Yeah.
But he also, what has always made him special is his sense and his feel for when to jump. And then he's got this great knack for when he's down low in the offensive zone, he never gets trapped down there. His skating is so good that he keeps moving where he's able to recover and get back defensively. Mm-hmm. He just you never see him pinch and then get caught behind the play. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And the pinch he had 2 games ago where he ends up with the goal that goes in, it was fortunate, threw it out front off a shin pad, but he was in the right spot and jumped into the play at the right time to make that play happen.
Yeah. Before we go to a break, how about that play Steven Stamkos made in overtime trying to go to the wall at the worst angle?
Yeah.
I mean,
you know what? That team, there were so many points in that game where you could just tell it's a team playing with zero confidence right now.
I just can't believe that play that he made on that. I mean, like how he thought that he was going to stop that puck from getting to Kaprizov from that angle.
It was a great play by Kaprizov.
Yeah, but my Lord.
Exactly. But there were so many. Forsberg looked like a guy playing with absolutely zero confidence and feeling like we have zero margin for error. Like I have to make this play. And I think right now they're a mess. They played hard, but they are they are disjointed. They don't have playmakers to get the puck on the stick of their, other than Roman Josi. Roman Josi drives their entire offense.
Yeah.
They just don't have the guys. And when you look at it,
who look good in that uniform is Mikhail Granlund right now. And then obviously he was going through some personal issues there down the stretch and then had to be traded to, Pittsburgh and then went to San Jose. But
what I hadn't thought about, and I know we talked about this going way back to the start of the season, when I said I didn't like Nashville's additions as much as everybody else was championing that, hey, look, they were good last year. They made the playoffs, and then they added this. To me, none of it made sense because none of those guys play the game the way they were playing it down the stretch when they went 25-3 in their last 28 games. And had this 18-game point streak mixed in there. They were a handful to play against. Their third and fourth lines were so big and heavy and strong. They won with Josi and Saros. And now you go out and add, and I get it, these guys scored, and they scored as recently as last year, guys like Marchessault and Stamkos, but those guys don't play the game that way. Yeah. And none of them, I hadn't really thought about it in this context until the game day morning. Stamkos didn't want to leave Tampa.
Yeah.
Marchessault didn't want to leave Vegas. Shea didn't want to leave Carolina. They all had to leave because of salary cap reasons. All of them would have stayed where they were. And I'm not saying those guys they're bitter. They signed good contracts and it's a great spot for them.
But mentally
in the back, they all have to be wondering, like, this isn't the same as it's always been. Mm-hmm. And think about being Marchessault. Well, I don't have Jack Eichel and Mark Stone playing with me anymore. And Steven Stamkos doesn't have Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov playing with him anymore. And Shea in Carolina, that was a totally different way of playing the game than the way Nashville plays it. I just think you got guys that are miscast for where they are right now in Nashville. And they're all good players. They've all been great players and had great careers. But I just don't know that roster makes sense for a team. I don't see them all of a sudden going on an 18-game point run like they did last year.
Yeah, I concur. 4 even strength points total between Steven Stamkos and Marchessault.
Even strength goal.
Yeah, it's crazy. We'll be right back. Deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with OnX Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt. That's onxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with a Royal Credit Union certificate. Whether you're saving for college, a vacation, wedding, or a down payment on a house, the Royal Credit Union certificate can help you reach your savings goals faster. Royal certificates have no minimum opening balance and a locked-in rate for a guaranteed return on your investment. Open a certificate at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/smartsaving. Insured by NCUA.
Back here, Worst Seats in the House, Mike Russo, Anthony LaPanta. December 17th is their next live show at Splitrocks. Jonas Brodin.
September 17th?
Oh, December 17th.
December 17th. All right.
And it could be September 17th next year, too.
I got it in my calendar.
Yep. There's no way that you'll, even on December 17th, you're going to ask me where we're going. Anyway, at least you heard it, because everybody else would have been like, "What?"
I pay attention when you talk.
Yeah, I know, that's true. I fell asleep while you filibuster. December 17th, 7 p.m. Splitrocks. Come on out. Jonas Brodin. I'm concerned about this one because it sounds like one of those Jared Spurgeon type situations of last year on how they're going to handle it. They're waiting for more information, and clearly when you hear stuff like that, they're coming up with a course of treatment. Do they probably give him cortisone shots, or could it be surgery that keeps him out a couple months? We'll see. But we're going to get more information this week. But that would be a huge loss because, Brodin has been excellent this season.
Terrific. I have no idea what the injury is. I just watching him. He was on top of his game. Mm-hmm. Played really well. What was it, the Winnipeg game? Was that right before Buffalo? He was good in the Winnipeg game, and then all of a sudden couldn't play in Buffalo.
Well, he got hammered once in the corner.
But he skated for a while in the morning in Buffalo, then came off the ice. And so at that time, I was thinking it might not be anything major, just because of the fact that he was at least there and giving it a shot. So it wasn't like whatever happened late in the Winnipeg game, it wasn't like it was immediate where, hey, I'm done for a while. I think the travel for this team is starting to catch up with some of these guys. And, this isn't to offer an excuse or anything, they travel in style. But
those Delta first class seats, man, they are tough.
But you know what it's like
I'm just kidding.
When you're on a plane as often as they have been, you're in different beds, you're just never, when we've been home, it's felt like a road stop because it's been home for 3 games, 2 games in 4 nights, and then you're back on the road again. Haven't had that stretch where you could just settle into a routine at home for a week. Yeah.
Well, somebody asked me the other day, why do I think the Wild have been so pedestrian at home? And I think that's part of the reason. They have not, no homestands.
It doesn't feel like you're at home.
They can never get into a rhythm. And those first couple of days after you get back from a long road trip, you're catching up on stuff.
Right.
And
this homestand right now is the first time it's felt like we've been home.
Yes.
And now to have these 2 days off, Sunday and Monday.
And even when they play Tuesday, we don't leave again for 2 days, where we're not just the next day going on
exactly.
the road,
So I think that's caught up with some of these guys, and I don't know that that's the case with Brodin, but I think it probably contributes.
Well, somebody else in the organization that I was talking to about Brodin's injury had the same kind of comment that you just made. So I do think it's something.
Yeah, and I don't know. We'll find out this week, but just watching him walk around the arena and everything, he's moving gingerly. It just appears
when Bill Guerin's saying, when everybody's saying we were getting more information this week, as you and I have discussed many times, these guys always know immediately, and
they do if it's an acute injury.
And
but
on this
some
one,
of these
they are coming.
tests.
Yeah, they are coming up with a course of treatment, how to handle it, and usually what that means is determining, naturally,
therapy, rehab, that kind of stuff, or else if you need surgery. I don't know. We'll find out probably this week. But what's unfortunate is, and I think I don't know if we talked about this on the last show. We talked about it on one of our broadcasts. If you look at the best defensive pairs in the NHL in terms of expected goals against, 2 of the top 3 have Brodin on it. Yeah. Brodin and Spurgeon are number 1. Brodin and Faber are number 3. And it has allowed Minnesota to forever, they've been built around their defensive core, and when healthy, that top 4 I'd put up there with just about anybody in the NHL. And the way they were playing this year, I would for sure. It's allowed Middleton and Faber to just play together, and we've always wondered how good it would look to have Brodin and Spurgeon together for extended time. We've now seen that. So it's really unfortunate. I feel badly for them because it just feels like it's been one or the other, one of the 4 that's been knocked out at all times over the last couple of years.
And also you feel badly for him because nobody needs to live in pain. And he is, when we see him, he is clearly in pain. And so, it was so obvious to me, like when I was looking at the picture of Spurgeon's Thanksgiving, dinner, all the local guys, the Fabers, Foligno had his brother in town. Like all the Travis boys, they weren't there. But the one guy that is from out of town that wasn't there is Brodin, and that's the day after he got back from Buffalo, and it just shows you that he is not healthy. And so you just wish him all the best. And obviously, it would be a huge loss for this team if they don't get him back in the lineup. But even if they get him back in the lineup, I do think though, just listening and reading between the lines and using reporter instinct from the way that Bill Guerin and John Hines have spoken, this is going to be something that's going to be an issue, I think, all year long, even if he comes back. So hopefully they get Brodin back. Team continues to win. It's December 1st. Again, prior to this Winnipeg game, top most points in the league, tied with Winnipeg. Technically, they're second because of the regulation wins, not having as many as Winnipeg. Last time the Wild were this high in the standings, it was about December 21, I believe.
It was December 17th, 2011.
Well, that was 21 where they
because I got in trouble.
Yeah,
I got harassed. I did a radio show with you. You were guest hosting on KFAN. And it was actually the next day because the Wild had won whatever it was, 7 or 8 in a row. Yeah. And then they lost in overtime to Winnipeg.
Right. Then Chicago. Then they beat the Islanders.
Right. But it was
that morning.
And I remember we did the show and I said, I just don't see it. I don't think this team I don't think they're a playoff team. And I got harassed by everybody at our network. I was hosting the pre and post game shows at the time. And they're like, "What? You can't go on the air." I said, "Why not? That's what I think. I don't think they're a playoff team."
I'm surprised I had you on the radio show. I didn't know you then.
Yeah, you did. I was hosting the pre and post game shows.
It's like, who's that pompous guy that's hosting? Who's
that guy that's insightful that has all the great information and angles on stuff?
But that was an unbunbelievable turn of events. They won 15 games the rest of the season. I thought the team was crazy.
It was no way it was sustainable the way they were winning games. Yeah. It just wasn't. And I didn't think they were deep enough. I didn't think that the goaltending would stand up. And in hindsight, it turned out that I was right. But at the time, I got harassed wandering back around the office. They said, "Well, the Wild didn't really like your comments." I was like, "Well, he asked me what I thought. I told him what I thought, and I will continue. Like right now, this year, I don't believe they're going to win the division. I hope it would be great if they did." But I don't think they're the best team in this division. And then
a year later, you became the play-by-play guy.
Right.
What do you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it was 2 seasons later, but it was the next season. The next season, right. Yeah.
It just was a little later than you had hoped because of the lockout. But that year, I mean, so again, last time they were this high, it was like early December of 2021 where they were this high, but the latest they've ever led the league was that December 17th. Again, 2-1 win over the Islanders. But the games before that, I remember Bruno got hurt. I think Bouchard got boarded by Bogosian. I think that was the time Bogosian got suspended. Cullen was sick. There was like a laundry list. But the one thing I'll remember is we had just gotten back from California. And I was in the press box in San Jose, and the Board of Governors meetings were out in Pebble Beach. And all of a sudden in the press box, Pierre LeBrun and Craig Custance show up. Pierre was working for ESPN. Custance, I can't remember if he was at ESPN or Sporting News at the time, but they came to do these fluff pieces on the Wild and how great they were. And they wrote these unbelievable stories about this Minnesota Wild team and Mike Yo's first year leading the league in points, and then boom, they win 15 games the rest of the year, don't make the playoffs. I think it's the only time that a team is leading the league in points in mid-December and actually missed the playoffs. So not something the Wild want to hang a banner with. Speaking of banners, banner went up at XL Energy Center today, PWHL Championship.
Oh, did it really?
Yep. So finally.
And you decided to do the podcast instead of being there for the ceremony?
Yeah, but at least there's a banner up there keeping the number one.
Well, they have a division. The Wild have a division championship banner. I know, it's a little
dusty. It's not good when you have a division championship banner that's hanging from a division that's been gone for a decade, at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, other teams have
Maybe
those.
This is the year, Anthony.
It could be. When you talk about the Central Division, I did a show with this guy in Washington who does a look around the league every week. And
is it Bruce Boudreau?
No, but I have joined him a few times just to talk about the Central in general. And the Central Division is terrific again. Winnipeg, I think, is in a similar spot to Minnesota where I think they've caught some people by surprise. And the closer you look, the more complete their team is than what you thought. I still don't think their defensive core is as stout as they've played so far. Some of the analytic numbers tell you what they're doing is not likely to be sustainable. They're in the bottom third of the league and some chances against and things like that right now Connor Hellebuck's bailing them out, and maybe he'll be able to do that all year. But Dallas, to me, is still, when I watch them play, I still think that team is the most complete in the division. Their record doesn't match it yet, but they've got some guys who haven't scored that are going to score.
J-Rob.
He's right. He's at the top of the list. He's going to end up scoring.
Yeah.
He has every other year. And they've got the goaltending. I still think they're the most complete team in the division, but I think all these other teams, I think Minnesota, Winnipeg, Colorado, they're all about the same. And Colorado's starting to find their game.
There is one metric that the Dallas Stars are lapping the league in, and that is, you know what?
Diving. Yeah. How about that?
Mason Marchment.
The Mason Marchment one, was that last night against Colorado?
Yeah, two nights ago.
It's ridiculous. And
he's not even, what I don't understand about the refs always like biting with this guy is he's the worst actor ever. Yeah. Like, it's unbelievable.
I just can't, if I'm a referee and I get caught, I fall for that once.
Yeah, I would never give him another call.
I would never fall for it twice with the same guy.
No.
I'd be like, I got to see the blood from the guy's face from
I
the
would be the
stick
most
before.
Unprofessional referee ever. I would be, the next day, I would text every referee and I'm like, just telling, this guy made a fool out of me last night and don't let him do it to you.
Yeah, but I don't think that's unprofessional. I mean, maybe it's unprofessional to text all the other refs, but it's not unprofessional to say, look, the guy showed me up.
Yeah.
And the next time he barks at me about not getting a call, I'd have no problem saying, look, I got to be sure, because the last time I thought you got hit because you flopped down like a sniper just hit you in the chin and the stick missed you by a foot.
Remember the one against Minnesota where he was coming through the neutral zone and he literally dove off a diving board.
And nobody touched him. Right.
You know, or how about the Jamie Benn one? I mean, excellent. I mean, it's over and over and over again. It's beyond belief. Let's talk about the Four Nations before we take our next break. The rosters are going to be submitted for Sweden, Finland, United States, and Canada on Monday. Wednesday, Sweden and Finland will be revealed during the day. Canada and USA will be revealed 5:30 Central Time on TNT. I think it's pretty fair to assume that Brock Faber and Matt Boldy will make the team for the USA, and I think Joel Eriksson Ek and Philip Gustafsson for Sweden. Even though he's hurt, even if he was healthy, I think Jonas Brodin is probably edged out of the blue liners for
he'd have been a bubble
for Sweden.
Guy for
yeah,
sure.
You know what makes it tough is for some bizarre reason, and I think we all know why. The NHLPA only wanted one extra forward, one extra defenseman, one extra goalie for this tournament. So it's 23 players. Every other international tournament's always 25. When the Olympics are happening in 2026, it's going to be 25 players. So it's put these GMs in a spot where, you know, maybe a Brodin would make it, but now he's not. And so Faber, I mean,
Faber's
I know
a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about this before we started the show. I think this is going to be an eye-opener for hockey fans all over the country, all over North America, all over the world, I guess, because I think people are going to realize just how good he really is. He's going to be playing against the best. It's what he does every night for Minnesota, but I just don't think people understand how good a skater he is, how strong on his skates he is, how well he sees the play, moves the puck. I think he's one of the more underappreciated defensemen in the league. I think this tournament is going to put him on the map as a guy to keep your eye on for the rest of his career. But this is going to be one of those platforms for a player. I think he's really going to showcase his skill.
And if Boldy makes it, my assumption is guys like J-Rob, Clayton Keller, Cole Caulfield probably will not make it. And, I think does that surprise you at all?
Would you take Boldy?
I think I would. I will say he has slowed down lately. But I think that he's so dynamic on the power play. He could play left wing or right wing. He's played himself into areas now where he's just providing the dirty, gritty type of plays that I think that Bill Guerin has long wanted. I would rather him than Cole Caulfield.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But
the way J-Rob's playing right now.
I haven't looked at the roster to say, hey, if I was building the team here. But to me, he's been I think his game has been terrific for Minnesota for most of the year, even though these last couple games when he's been with Eriksson and Kaprizov, I think their line's been a little off. But I think he's been really good. I just don't know that I'd look at him and say this is a top 13 among American-born guys. I think it really depends on how you see your roster being structured. He wouldn't be out of place on the team without a doubt. I don't know that he's put himself in a no-brainer spot. If it's me, I think he's a bubble guy, but Billy's made the comment so many times, we're not putting together an all-star team.
Yeah.
We're putting together the best team that can go win a tournament.
The way I look at it right now, I assume the top line is going to be something like Kyle Connor, Austin Matthews, Matthew Tkachuk. If you have a second line of Jake Gensel with Jack Eichel, who might be the best two-way player right now for the United States. I mean, he is a matchup guy. I was watching their game 2 games ago. He is like Selke-like right now, the way he plays defensively.
I haven't watched them this year.
And then you have Boldy on the right. Oh, my goodness. I think that could be a good line. And then a third line that's probably Jack Hughes, JT Miller if he's playing, and Brady Tkachuk. That's really good. And that's where things get really tough because now you're looking at fourth-line guys and who could play there. You have Tage Thompson. You have Chris Kreider and Vincent Trocheck, who haven't had very good years. You have Brock Nelson. There's a lot of guys that are not going to make this team that people are going to be like, well, how are you taking Vincent Trocheck over Tage Thompson?
But it depends on how you see him. You got to have penalty killers.
Right,
you got to have face-off guys.
Yep.
And Trocheck's been good there for the last 4 or 5 years. I think I don't think people realize just how valuable he's been in that role over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think
Brock Nelson's on the team.
I love his game.
He is such a chameleon. He could play. He could kill penalties. He could be on the ice, protect late in the game. He could play up and down your lineup, left wing, right wing,
such
center.
a smart hockey player with great.
Like I can't wait. Like if Tage Thompson
wingspan.
doesn't make the team, oh my God, Buffalo is going to just implode. So, which would might make it prettier.
I like Thompson's game. Now I know he just came back from injury when the Wild were in Buffalo, and we saw a few examples. But again, so now you really have to start to sit down and say, okay, put your guys on the ice. Who's going to be where on the power play?
Yeah,
because it's hard to find.
That's why
many guys that are that much better than Thompson from his spot.
Like I just did a projection in Monday's Athletic where I sort of picked the team and like that's why I don't think John Carlson's on the team. I know he's having a great year, but you have Quinn Hughes, you have Adam Fox. You're going to have 4 forwards on each power play unit. So where's Carlson going to play? He is a power play guy.
Yeah.
And if
he's
like
not
let's
one
just
of your
say
top 6 shutdown defensemen.
Let's just say if Zach Werenski makes the team, who might be the best defenseman right now of all Americans, the way he's playing.
Game.
Like if he's not like he's a power play guy, so like I just don't see how like a Carlson makes it. So, what do you think, Gustafson? 100%?
I think 100% because if you look at we were talking about this the other day. Markstrom and Allmark, are the 2 that you would consider coming into the year as maybe the no brainers.
Yeah.
Well, Gustafson's been better than Allmark.
Yeah.
He's been right there with Markstrom.
Yeah.
I think it's more a question of is Gus the 1 or 2 guy rather than the 3 guy.
Yeah. I
think he's leading the league in goals against and save percentage. How do you not take the guy?
Absolutely. And Eriksson obviously making it. We'll be right back. Hey, it's Russo for Aquarius Home Services and Connecticut. Fall is here, football, cool, crisp air, and the perfect time to bundle up and save with Aquarius. Right now, save 25% when you bundle a Connecticut non-electric water softener with their K5 drinking water system. Get ready for spotless dishes, shiny fixtures, and pure, refreshing drinking water. I've had this system for years. I even had them out the other day to put in new filters. Everything is incredible when you have one of these Connecticut systems. Aquarius, your independent authorized Connecticut dealer, is here to take your water worries away. Schedule your free water analysis at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. Don't forget to mention that Russo sent you.
When it comes to great steaks, it's all about the marbling. And there's a 1 through 12 scale for marbling that will measure what the quality is of the steak. And for Feller's Ranch Wagyu, it's some of the best you'll find. They won't sell their steaks unless they're at a marbling level of 6 to 10 on a scale of 12. It's some of the best steaks you'll find. Just for reference, USDA Prime can be called USDA Prime as long as it's at 3 or 4 on that same scale. this steak is some of the best I've had. You can find it at fellersranch.com. Their vans are in the cities every week. They can deliver it to you. There are also a couple of spots within the cities where you can pick it up. You won't be disappointed. If you're having a great meal and you want to have steak, there's no place to go that's better than Fellers Ranch.
Back here, Worst Seats in the House, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. December 17th is our next live show. What do you want to talk about, Anthony? Anything? Otherwise, we're going to go to Twitter questions.
I don't mind a few Twitter questions. My mind's starting to shift toward dinner already.
How come you didn't come to the Oil Kings game with Gorgie and I last week?
Well, I had no lack of interest. Is that fair enough? I mean, if it's an American League game, I might have wanted to go see it. The Western League didn't do much for me. And plus, I had to go out and have dinner with our producer, Rigatoni. Ricky Palermo. It was his first time in Edmonton. So I took him to a steak place and had a solid night. It was good.
That's good. Yeah, it was fun.
I had to show him Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah,
I mean, first time to really Edmonton. So yeah, you have to go to Sherlock Holmes pub and realize the way things work in Edmonton.
Yeah. We had nasty weather on that trip. That was when Anthony left me at the. Didn't feel necessary to tell me that you were taking the team bus to the rink.
Yeah, it was because
did we bitch about this on last week's show?
Yeah, it was on last week's show already. We talked about it. And it was that you forgot to tell me when you were going to breakfast.
No. All right, let's go to Twitter questions. Can you explain how Chisholm's contract works? Is he a UFA or RFA? Basically, he's over 20. He's 25, right? Or in his 25th year, which is technically, I think he's 24, but in NHL standards, he's 25. So you have to play less than 80 games. To be a UFA Group 6 or more than 80, you're an RFA. That's actually prorated down. So it's actually probably about 74, 75. I got to find out from the league because the COVID takes that number down. But usually it's 80 games. So as long as he gets, I think yesterday was his 51st NHL game. So as long as he gets 20, let's just to be safe, 29 more games, he'll be an RFA as compared to a UFA. But again, that number is actually less. So I think it's about 74 to 75 games. So basically, as long as he doesn't get hurt this year, he's going to be a restricted free agent and continues to play. Captain Spaulding, will the Wild ever put John Merrill on waivers with David coming up? Right now, with Brodin's injury, I don't see them putting him on waivers. I don't see any reason why. Anthony, he's been fine, right? I mean, people are still like, there's no perfect defenseman, and when you're in that role, like he's doing his job fine. The Merrill Chisholm thing is right on top. I know it's not a lot of sample size, but he's right on top of the league.
Well,
in terms of analytics,
I don't know what do you think you're going to find to replace him? Yeah, as a third pair defenseman, he's been. Start to watch more closely some of the other teams' third pair defensemen.
Yeah.
I mean, take a look at the third pairs that we've just seen in recent games. Mm-hmm. Buffalo's third pair was a disaster. Mm-hmm. Edmonton's third pair looks like they should be in the American Hockey League. I mean, that's what do you have? What are you hoping to find to replace him? I think his game's been good, and he's been good on the kill. And what if he's going to give you 12, 14 minutes a night? That's what you need.
I completely agree with you. I don't know. There's certain, I think we need to stop with the Merrill hate. He's playing pretty well. What's going on with Wallstad? He struggled and didn't play this weekend. Sam Creator said, that is an interesting thing. I asked somebody with the Wild today why he didn't play yesterday in Charlotte. And the only thing I was told was he's not hurt. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's a mental break because he's struggling so mightily. What's going on? But when I sent a reply to the person that told me he's not hurt, what's going on then? Is this a mental break? This person didn't reply to that reply. So something's up.
Well, there's got to be some frustration there.
Yeah.
A guy who came into the season thinking he was essentially an NHL player that was going to be knowing he was going to be sent to Iowa from time to time to get work, but fully expecting to play. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they'd given him a number, but in his mind, he had to be thinking, I'm going to play 15, 18, 20 games in the NHL. And mm-hmm. and maybe with the determination of I'm going to play so well, they can't send me down.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden you're in Iowa, you're watching a team in the National Hockey League have a tremendous amount of success. You'd give anything to be there. And it's hard for guys sometimes to just focus on, I just have to be the best I can be where I am and let everything else work out. Think about all the times we've talked over the years about guys going to Iowa and doing exactly what was expected of them, what they needed to do, which was to go down there and dominate so that when the time came, you were the first guy called up. And in this case, a little different because he's a goalie, but your job is to go down there and dominate the American Hockey League. And when you don't do that, and sometimes it might be, all right, the team in front of me is not playing great. And now my numbers don't look good. And now I'm never going to get called up. And you can see how that mentally snowballs quickly. And it's a challenge for him, I'm sure, right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Nate asked, what was Anthony's favorite dish he ate on Thanksgiving? Was it the steak or was it the...
The steak was good. We had fillets that night. The steak was really good. I made a good soup too. It was a carrot, squash, and ginger soup. That was good with toasted pancetta on top.
Yeah, sounds very Thanksgiving-y.
That was Thanksgiving-ish. It had squash in it. Squash and carrots.
Boldy Stan asks, is Ecker banged up? Doesn't seem like himself a little while now. I think he is banged up, Anthony. I think he's playing fine, but I know he's not producing to the level that Wild fans have come to expect from him. But I do think that we know that he got hurt a couple weeks ago, missed a couple games, and got back in the lineup. And I think if you look at him, I think his skating is not the greatest right now. I think he is banged up, but it's obviously good enough to play on.
His game just doesn't change.
Yeah. Ryan Steeman goes, what do we do with Huznadinov? Dude looks shifty as F and super skilled, but he's bogged down on the third and fourth lines. You and I have talked about this. He's where he should be.
He's exactly where he should be. And
what do they want from him? He did get his 7th shot on goal last night.
Well, and look, I mean, if he was dominating shifts, they'd find spots for him. And he's had a couple spots over the course of the year where somebody hasn't been going and they've thrown him out there for a couple shifts. And his game right now has not warranted to play any more or any higher in the lineup than he's playing. And this might be where he is for his career. He might be a bottom 6 guy, which there's a lot of players who have great careers in the bottom 6. And he's been good on the kill. But think about last year where everybody was, this guy's going to be the savior. And as soon as he came in, first game, he won 4 out of 6 faceoffs. And it was on a team that can't win a faceoff. This guy, they've been burying this guy all year. Well, he's like 45% on draws. I mean, let's let the guy play. Let's let the guy play his way up the lineup before we start to move guys around to make room for him.
Sea-Dog goes, is there any chance the Wild bring back Johansson next season? I hope not. That's him saying that, me.
I think it's really unlikely.
I agree. I mean,
he's been really good this year. He really has. His skating has been terrific.
The reason why it just makes no sense is because of the edict to go out and get some free agents, and we know Yurov's coming and all that type of stuff.
And he's not a guy he isn't a guy that thrives when he plays in a lesser role. He thrives when he plays in a more significant role. And so if all of a sudden you go add a top 6 winger and say, does Marcus Johansson have value as a 4th line guy? I don't think that's the best fit for him. And I think he's been great though this year. He really has. His analytic numbers have been better than his scoring numbers, but I just think his skating from the start has looked like the old Johansson, where he's been a part of that. It hasn't just been along for the ride. He's been driving the offense.
Yeah, he's got points in 6 of the last 7 or 7 of the last 8. I think
6 out of 7.
Spicy Rich goes, if Buffalo still looks out come playoff time, could Alex Cuck possibly become available? Would Minnesota be interested in him at a bargain 4.75 for 2 more years? I again just don't see the Wild going after anybody with term. Until they figure out what is Kaprizov going to cost. And if you got to re-sign
the
Rossi,
only exception would be somebody like that, where the guy with term is on such a team-friendly number.
Yeah.
I think Tuck at under $5 million, that's a team-friendly number where that I wouldn't mind taking on, because I don't know who you're going to get that's I mean, if you get a guy that's better than that, it's going to cost you $8-9 million bucks on the free agent market.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you.
Next year, I'm saying. So if next year you went into the year saying we're going to get a player that's the equivalent of him, or a player of a guy like him, it's going to cost you. It's got to be a $7 or $8 million player.
Yep, concur. Daryl asks, why has LaPanta changed the pronunciation of Trenin? Started the season as Trenin, now he's pronouncing it Trenyon. Is that what it is now?
Well, I actually talked to him about it, and the way he says it, there's a subtle Y when he says his name. So Trenyon might be an exaggeration. It's more like Trenyon, and that's how he says it. So I've just tried to say it the way he does.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Look at you. Finally pronouncing names right.
Finally. There's sometimes I want to just reply to, like, look, we talked to the guy. This is how the guy said he wanted his name said. And NHL is a bizarre world. We've talked about this a few times before, where there are brothers that want their names different. The guys get traded and they want it to be said differently. And there was a guy this year, I don't remember who it was, so I'm not going to waste time trying to think about it, but he had gotten traded. I asked their broadcasters, because the broadcasters usually talk to each other because they rely on me to say, here's how the Wild players say their names, and I rely on them because I don't have time to go in their locker room and go check every guy. And he said, yep, this guy came this year, and he said he wanted to switch it to this because this is what it's supposed to be. But in the last market, he gave up after a week because nobody could say it right, so he just said, that's fine, just go with that. And that's the kind of stuff that, as a broadcaster, you deal with. And so, yeah, then they say, well, when he was here, it was this. Well, Marcus Johansson is an example. When he was in Washington, they all called him Johansson. And when he came here, I went to him, asked him, he said, no, it's Johansson. And so every time the Washington guys come, they say, well, when he was here, it was Johansson. I said, I don't know what to tell you. I walked up to him. Remember Zach Parise? Doc Emmerich would call him Parise. And I said, Zach, how do you say your name? Parise. I went to JP and said, how do you say your name? Parise. It's always easy if you just say Parise. And I was like, but I got these other guys telling me that that's not how they say it. The French-Canadian way is this. Well, I asked the guy.
Well, remember, Zidlicki himself changed it 3 different times here to Zidlitsky and then Zidlitsky.
The Mahaliks were brothers, wanted their name pronounced differently. Yeah. One wanted to be Mahalik and one wanted Mahalik. Yeah. How are you supposed to keep that straight?
Puckle goes, I know Hellebuck is big at 6'4", but the equipment he was wearing on Monday looked oversized. Thoughts on opposing teams calling the situation out? Every single thing besides the mask and the sticks. No, I think it's the mask and the skates that a goalie wears. Every single thing that a goalie wears goes to Kay Whitmore's office in Toronto, the former goalie, and he measures it and signs off on it. Every single thing. If you look at the chest protector of Gustafsson and Marc-Andre Fleury, the pads of Gustafsson and Marc-Andre Fleury, everything. It has Kay Whitmore's signature on the back. In fact, if you ask anybody that buys and sells game-used equipment, they will know if it's not authentic, if it doesn't have Kay Whitmore with goalies, Kay Whitmore's thing. So while Hellebuck might have looked big the other night, his stuff has been sent to Toronto first. It's sent to Toronto from the manufacturer, then it's sent to the team after Kay. Like if you go to Kay Whitmore's office, which is next to the Situation Room in Toronto, his office is just full of goalie gear.
Yeah, we saw it there. How about, did you see the statement the league made about the tampering with free agency?
Yep. Well,
that was interesting.
Oh, it really is interesting.
We've all known it's going on for years.
Ridiculous. I mean, there's a player on the Wild that told me that all the stuff that he was doing but before July 1.
When July 1 comes and the free agent season opens, do you think it's a mystery how guys are signing in the first 4 minutes of free agency?
I mean, we knew that Yakov Trenin was signing with the Wild before, and Trenyon. There you go. I think that's a perfect way to end the podcast right there.
I think it's perfect.
It was a good little mic drop. Anything else you want to talk about, Anthony?
Nope, it's time to make dinner.
Yeah. No, I think you should say one more thing.
We've
apologize maybe for not having the consideration to text me in Calgary that you were not going to come down and join me in the car ride. I told you
that I might ride with you tomorrow.
That's not the way
you
it was.
invited me to breakfast and then went to breakfast without me.
Yeah. All right.
We'll see you in Anaheim.
Awesome. December 17th, our next live show, 7 p.m. at Splitrocks. Thanks to our incredible sponsors. This is the Aquarius Home Services studio. Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Royal Credit Union, Onyx Maps, and of course, Feller's Ranch. Talk to you next week, everybody. So much coming out, there's nothing growing in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win.
but the world won't forgive